The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to St. John.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
On the third day, a wedding took place in Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Dear woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. "My time has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. And he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." This is the first of his miraculous signs Jesus performed in Cana in Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Almighty and gracious Lord, we give you thanks as we remember the wedding at Cana where you were able to turn water into wine and reveal to us your nature, your purpose, and your mission. Lord, we ask now that your Spirit be upon us as we look into your word together. May you guide the words of my lips. All this we ask through Christ our Lord. Well, when I was in high school, I think I've told you all before, I worked for a photographer. And his biggest clientele were wedding couples. So almost every single weekend when I was in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, I was shooting a wedding. And we were always going out. We saw all kinds of weddings: Jewish weddings, Christian weddings, Catholic weddings, atheistic weddings, Unitarian weddings, weddings with dogs in it, all kinds of crazy business. And sometimes I would even get to shoot my own weddings if the wedding was too small for his budget, or if he was overworked. He would just kind of send me out to do my own. And let me tell you, one of the reasons why I didn't go on to become a photographer is because of weddings. They are so incredibly stressful. There are so many things that can go wrong with weddings, and the people are always nervous that that's what's going to happen, right? They're stressed out. You got the bride and the groom that are stressed. You got the mother-in-law or the mother that's stressed. You got some sister off in a corner. She's stressed. The caterer is anxious. The DJ's, high-strung. Everybody is high-strung. It's crazy business. I think it's the nature of weddings, though. Everyone's just a little bit tense and at ease, uneasy. I've seen a bride one time throw a plate of mashed potatoes. I saw one weeping hysterically because the flowers, though they were exactly how she ordered them, just didn't seem to pop the way she wanted them to. I saw a groom one time flip out at a limousine driver because he wasn't there early, just on time. I had a mother-in-law yell at me because she wanted a picture of her and her son-in-law dancing, but thought that I had ruined the moment with my flashes. When I was in the ordination process for priestly ordination, I feared weddings, having to do them. I didn't want to get back into this world. And I can tell you, I can't tell you how many people probably wish that they had Jesus at their wedding, like he was in Cana, able to miraculously solve any problem that could arise. So that then there wouldn't be any stress, there wouldn't be any anxiety. But I'm sure it's not just weddings that we wish that we invited Jesus into, right? I'm sure there's all kinds of areas in our lives that we had wished that we had invited Jesus into, so that he can miraculously provide for us or change our circumstances like he did in Cana. Our gospel lesson reminds us this morning that all of us will have moments in our lives when the wine will run out, and that there's only one person that can replenish that wine. All of us are going to have stressful moments, times of crisis, when all hope is lost. And only Jesus has the ability to transform our lives, transform our circumstances, and make them new. In our gospel lesson this morning, John tells us that Jesus and his disciples had been invited to a wedding in Cana. And it was common practice back then for a wedding to invite all of the town. And so it's not uncommon for Jesus to be invited and say, hey, why don't you just bring your disciples, come on in. And we think that Mary had a strong relationship with this couple in Cana because she seems to be serving, based on the text, as some sort of head of the servants. You know, kind of like, you know, great Aunt Edna coming into town saying, hey, don't worry about the caterer or where the flowers will go. I'll take care of all that. I'll make sure the caterer's in the proper place. I'll make sure the flowers get to go where they need to go. And that's why she comes to realize, she's the first to realize that the wine's run out. You know, she realizes, uh-oh, we've got a major problem here. A wedding in the ancient Jewish day was an important event. You know, it was very much like our days. Weddings are important, but it was a little bit more important for them. Because there was a certain protocol that had to be followed. They were announced well in advance, much like we do, but, you know, as I said, they invited the entire town. These were big ordeals. They were up to 7 days long. Now, if you've had to pay for a wedding recently, aren't you glad that that tradition has died out? Imagine, take what you paid for a wedding and multiply it by at least 7. And we're not just talking friends and family, we're talking extended neighbors here. This could be expensive. And, you know, gift giving was also an important thing. You know, we're not talking little toaster ovens and blenders and things like that. If a gift was not appropriate, or if it wasn't worthy enough, the gift giver could be legally charged or criminally charged for not giving a gift worthy enough because they were bringing disgrace upon the couple. It was also a social event, you know, and it was a social time for families. And if there was some sort of problem, it could spell social disaster for the family. And it's a thing like this a family could never live down. Well, that's exactly what seems to happen in Cana. Whatever happened, all of the wine gets consumed before the celebration is over. This happens a lot in life, doesn't it? There are times when our wine runs out in life, where we just seem to just be dry. In the ancient Jewish world, wine symbolized joy and celebration. You always had wine at celebratory times. I had a friend tell me one time that during a Seder Passover meal, you always had to have a lot of wine, because it's a celebration as well. You know, although we're remembering this thing, it's also a celebration of God's redemption. And so you got to have wine. Wine was a joyful thing. And so for the wine to run out, it's a symbol that the joy is gone. How many of us have seasons in our lives when we feel like the joy has just run out of us? Where we're just dry from all celebration and all joy and anything that could fill us with happiness. Recently over the summer, I found out a friend from high school had the joy just sucked out of her. And that the meaning of her life just seemed to disappear. And unfortunately, it got to the point where she felt that her life no longer could have meaning. It was never going to have purpose. It wasn't headed down the path she had planned. So she decided to walk out into a moving car and end it all. But you know, she's not alone. How many people, how many families feel like the joy is gone? How come people start out their marriages with exuberant joy, but then quickly end in divorce? Why is that? Because there's no more joy in the relationship. How many people in America are trying to find joy and trying to fill that void with all kinds of different things? They try to fill it with meds or with substance or with careers or with hobbies. How many people truly do have circumstances robbing them of joy? Situations and things that are beyond their control that are sucking them dry. Ultimately, we're never able to fulfill those jars, or fill those jars again, are we then? It's only when we realize that we can't fill the jars in our lives with wine, can we begin to realize that we need a miracle. We need Jesus to show up in our lives like he did in Cana. This sign teaches us that when the wine runs out, only Jesus can replenish the wine. Only Jesus can be the source of true joy and celebration in our life. Only Jesus can transform our lives and our circumstances, which is exactly why Mary turns to Jesus. Now, we don't know why the wine ran out. We don't know if it was bad planning, if the people were doing a little extra consuming, maybe, you know, the disciples getting out of control. We don't know what happened. But we do know that it runs out, and we see in verse 3, Mary takes the problem to Jesus. And what we read can appear to be a very tense moment. If you read out of the ESV, it almost seems like a very contentious argument that's about ready to happen. And I like the way the NIV translates it as dear woman, but in other versions it's just woman. Why do you involve me with this? And I mean, that would get me in the doghouse with my mom. Well, there's a couple of things that can be going on in this situation. And I want to talk about that. We could assume that Mary knew what her son was capable of. You know, it's 30 years she's lived with the incarnate Son of God. Maybe it's been 30 years since she's had to go grocery shopping. Every week Jesus takes some sticks and stones and poof, bread and you know, spaghetti. I don't know, whatever he does. So it's been 30 years. Jesus does this all the time. Come on, Jesus, just do what you always do at home. But you know, John says this was the first sign, which is a miracle that Jesus performed. So maybe Jesus has never performed something like this, and she's simply going to Jesus as her firstborn son, absent now of a husband, because we never hear of Joseph again. She's just going to her firstborn son saying, hey, I'm in charge of this, and I need your help. I need you to go to town with your disciples and go get us some more boxed wine. Come on, let's go. Well, I think it does appear that Mary wanted Jesus to perform a miracle. I think she knew. I mean, obviously she knew that what Jesus was capable of. She knew how he was conceived. She knows who Jesus is and what kind of power he holds. And I think Jesus' response in other translations of woman might sound like we're getting ready to hear a very contentious argument. But like I said, the NIV is right. He's saying, dear woman, why are you involving me with this? My hour has not yet come. And it's not that Jesus is angry with his mother. He's not upset with her request. He just needs to declare something about the nature and the purpose of his life. Now stay with me here, because we're going to go a little bit deeper, and it might zone out a bit, but it's important for us. So stick with me, all right? All right. In some sense, Mary is presuming on her relationship with Jesus. And Jesus now has to confront this with Mary. He can no longer act under her authority as her son and his mother. Instead, he now must follow the course that has been determined for him by his Father. If you remember last week, we studied the baptism of Jesus, right? John baptizes Jesus there in the Jordan River, and what happened? Jesus has a moment there where the heaven is tore open, and God the Father audibly speaks, saying, this is my beloved Son. The Spirit comes down in the shape of a dove. And this serves as Jesus' starting point of his ministry. This serves as a public inauguration of Jesus' public ministry. And so now he's following God the Father's timetable and mission in life. He's beginning his purpose. And so now Jesus is reminding his mother that he is committed to that mission and purpose in life. He now must begin the journey to the cross, and nothing can derail him. And so what Jesus is saying is, dear woman, why do you involve me with this? This is not what I've been sent to do. I'm not here for your convenience. I'm not here to make your life easier. I have a purpose. And you remember, God the Father, who you heard, commissioned me. And I must begin that. It can't be like the old days. It can't be like when I was a little boy. I have to do what I've been sent to do. He was a gifted leader, but Jesus didn't come to sell books on leadership. He was a gifted teacher, but he didn't come to educate people. And he was a gifted miracle worker, but he didn't come to do table tricks at a wedding. Jesus' mission and purpose was to die on a cross to save those who put their trust and their faith in him. He came to save the lost, not find wine for a wedding. He came to die for the sins of the world. And that hour had not come yet, according to Jesus. And Jesus is reminding his mother that his abilities are not there for convenience. And his purpose and ours, the most important thing to him now, he's putting his arm around his mother and he's saying, look, Mama, it's not like when I was a kid. I've got to operate under my own Father's timetable and mission now. Now, it wasn't that he was unwilling to do these things for his mother. He's just saying, Mom, you've got to know where my precedence is. You've got to know where I put you now. It's no longer me submitting to you, but you must now submit to me as Lord and Savior. And here's the point for us. Yes, Jesus is the only source and joy, the only source of joy and celebration for our lives. And only through Jesus can we find supernatural joys. And only through Jesus can we be transformed and receive new wine. but that doesn't make him our personal genie, granting us our every whim and desire in hopes that we find joy and happiness. He's not there for our personal convenience and just to make our life easier. Jesus has a purpose, and he has a purpose for our life. And I think so oftentimes we get consumed with our shopping list of prayer requests. We have these great litanies, Lord, if you just give me the house, the job, the family, the career, the image, the beauty, this, that, then my life will have joy and completion. Jesus, if you just get on my purpose and my plan, then everything will just be better. Let me tell you how to do it, Jesus. We want Jesus to get on our plan and our purpose for our convenience. But Jesus is not our genie. He's not here to grant us our requests. He has a purpose for his life, and he has a purpose for our lives. And like Mary, Jesus might be asking us this morning, whose will are you wanting me to follow? Are you more interested in Jesus' purpose for our lives? Or are you more interested in trying to convince him to perform miracles in your life? For your convenience, for your sake, because you think you've got it all mapped out. It's not that Jesus is uninterested in our problems. He certainly is. And this is what the wedding at Cana shows. He wants to hear us when we run out of wine. He wants to hear our problems, but he wants to know where your heart is. Are you willing to follow him? Are you willing to do what he says to do? Are you willing to put his precedence first? Or are we just going to spend our lives trying to convince Jesus that we've got it all figured out and he needs to get on our plan? We see Mary's response, that she's on board with Jesus. And I think it's very subtle, but it's there. And she looks to the servants and she says, do what the Son says to do. If he says do nothing, do nothing. But if he says to do something, do something. I'm on his plan. I'm on his timetable. I'm on his purpose now. So Jesus instructed the servants to fill 6 ceremonial jars with water. Now the fact that these were ceremonial jars is important, because these aren't jars just for holding water. They're not for serving guests at the dinner table. They're not for gardening outside. They have a purpose. They're sacred jars, used for daily washing and cleansing. They're to be used for the Jewish ceremony of cleansing off the sin, getting yourself clean. It was in the Old Testament that certain jars be kept around for cleaning oneself every day. Now could you imagine what those servants thought when Jesus commanded them to fill them with water, but then to serve them to the head servant and to call it wine? I mean, is this guy nuts? Is this guy a lunatic? He is off his rocker. I mean, I know Mary's a close friend, but her son is crazy. But they do it anyways. They listen to Mary. And somewhere in the process, Jesus miraculously turns this water into wine. We don't know when or how, and that's not John's point, but the point he's trying to make is he wants to reveal something about Jesus. He's trying to tell us something new and something fresh about Jesus. The key to understanding that starts with the choice of jars. He chooses these purification jars, these ceremonial jars. They're symbols of the Old Testament. They're symbols of the Old Testament law and covenant, because that's where we're told to keep these jars around. And the fact that they were empty was symbolic of where the law and the covenant was with the people, it was with their lives. It was empty. It was hollow. It was dried up. It was gone. It's not any fault of God, but it was the fault of the people. They had let their jars go empty. They had let the law go dry in their hearts. And now Jesus tells them to fill them again. Jesus fills them with wine and gives them a new purpose, which is another symbol that we talked about of celebration and joy. Wine is the symbol of celebration and joy. So by replacing the water with wine, Jesus is saying he has come to replace the old system with something new, something greater, something joyful and abundant. He came to replace the old purification law, which did not give any permanent relief to sin, with his one perfect sacrifice, which is able to permanently and completely save those who come to God through him. He came to replace the old ceremonial law and covenant, symbolized by the water, with the new covenant of grace and joy illustrated by the wine. And you know something? This new covenant and this new wine has the ability to transform us as well. I don't think it's any coincidence that Jesus chooses wine here And he chooses wine at the Eucharist to symbolize newness, transformation, all connected to what he does at the cross. Jesus wants to transform everyone's life. In the book of Revelation, John says that Jesus speaks out. He says, "Behold, I have come to make all things new." Jesus wants to make everything new. He wants to transform everyone's life. Jesus is all about transformation, transforming our old, dry lives into new, joyful, complete lives in him. He turned water into wine. He can turn frowns into smiles. He can turn whimpers of fear into songs of hope. He can turn deserts into gardens. He can turn sorrow into joy. He can turn sin into grace, death into life. Maybe today you're feeling like your wine has run out. Maybe there's no more joy in your life. Maybe your life is like one of those stressful weddings that we talked about. Everything seems to be going wrong. Every circumstance that could happen is happening. Your joy is gone and you want it back. Your energy is gone. You feel spiritually drained and dry. You underestimated a toll of emotion based off an illness or a personal setback or some crisis in your life. What Jesus says is, hand it to me. Get on my purpose. Get on my mission. Get on my plan. And watch me transform your life. Watch me turn your life around. Let me take the brokenness in your life and give you newness, transformed, redeemed lives. Ask him to turn this stale stage of your journey into a fresh and joyous one. So what are you going to do when your wine runs out? What are you going to do when your jars are empty? Jesus wants to transform you. He wants to redeem you. He wants you to bring him to your needs. He wants you to trust him. Amen.
Amen.